What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction. In this one we have, why does the UK drive on the left? That's a great question, where most of us drive on the right side, which is the right side. The UK drives on the left, which is the wrong side. We're going to find out. Before we do, if you guys happen to enjoy, please don't forget to subscribe. Give the video a thumbs up. And if you like to support this channel by becoming a member, all you got to do is hit that join button and receive your exclusive benefits. And let's figure this out.
British people drive on the left when most of the world does the opposite. Honestly, I had no idea. Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alana and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 7 years. I always want to know more about my second home here, why things are the way that they are, and the question came up, why do Brits drive on the left? And in that moment I realized I literally have no idea. If you have a guess as to why Brits drive on the left, make sure to leave a comment down below. Without further ado, let's go. Now, before we can even consider talking about driving on the left, we have to talk about, quite simply, walking. And walking everywhere. Now, obviously, roads and paths were a thing long before cars were even a concept.
Of course.
And this idea of which side of the path you should walk on was an issue that people thought about. If we go back in time, if we rewind a little bit, the big fear when traveling, whether you were walking by yourself, with others, whatever, was violence, really. Getting mugged on the road. 0 out of 10 do not recommend. So typically, because most people were right-handed, they would tend to walk on the left, because if you had some sort of weapon like a sword or something, you could pull it out with your right hand. The person that's attacking you would be on the right side, so it just made sense to pass people while you are walking on the left. So it seems that most people start out walking on the left, and it's typically due to a I don't want to get mugged situation.
That's insane. That's so crazy to me. It's like, sword. Hey, so that's why y'all walk on the left, to whip the sword out. And I mean, now y'all, I'm assuming ain't nobody whipping no swords out in today's day and age. So now I'm sure it's done, just because now it's ingrained in the culture. But it started out, hey, gotta make sure don't nobody mug me. I gotta make sure I'm protected, I'm safe. If anybody do something, this sword coming out and it's gonna be ready. That's so wild to me.
Which is a little bit paranoid, but also it makes sense. This is also really helpful for people who rode horses. So again, most people are right-handed. When you are right-handed, it is easier to mount a horse from the left. And you don't really want to be standing in the middle of traffic, getting on and off the horse. So again, makes sense. You're on the left-hand side of the road. You mount the horse from the left, and you get off the horse from the left.
So there you go.
Wonderful. So
there you go.
Naturally,
there's your answer.
The Brits kept left. And it wasn't until more and more horses and carriages and that kind of thing started to really clog British roads that keeping left eventually became law. Now, the earliest one of these laws was in 1756, specifically for London Bridge, a very busy place. They really needed to keep the flow of traffic going, so that law came into effect. You gotta keep left. Shortly after this, in 1772, towns in Scotland followed suit. They also wanted to keep left. Legally keep left. And then finally, in 1835, for all of Great Britain and Ireland, it was law to keep left. Now, what about Britain's neighbors? So, while Britain...
Just after doing it for so long, you get more horses taking up the road. Now you get cars coming in. Now, hey, it's law to be on the left. Because it had been done so long, it was like, hey, let's go ahead and write it in the law. You got to be on the left. It's the law now.
Kind of off in its own little area, decided to keep left. What was everybody else doing? In 1300, the Pope instructed pilgrims traveling to Rome should keep to the left. I guess he just decided. When you're a pope, you can do that. Now, it's also worth noting
you got that power.
While this story is repeated a lot In all of the little research that I did, a little bit of a bing, this story comes up often. However, other sources indicate that the Pope instructed people to keep to the right instead, and there is no documentation to back up either claim. How fun.
Oh.
Now, if we forget about the Pope for a second.
So some sources say Pope said to the left, others say Pope said to the right, but it ain't no documentation to say which one the Pope actually said, so we don't know if he said to the left or to the right. You know what I'm saying? It's electric side. To the left. To the right now, y'all. Alright, I'll continue.
Okay. Did he tell people keep left, keep right? That is for other people to figure out, not me. But I did find there is a study of ancient traffic in Pompeii, which is fascinating. Now, this study showed that when people were traveling in Pompeii, carts, horses, whatever, they would choose to go down the middle of the road whenever possible. And this was the case even when the road was wide enough for 2 lanes.
Why?
They would just prefer to take the middle. And apparently the wear on these stones as part of this research study showed that if it was wide enough for 2 lanes and it was busy enough for 2 lanes of traffic in Pompeii, people would keep to the right. And apparently this idea of people keeping right could be found in other parts of the Roman Empire. So, keep left, keep right.
Right.
What about just down the middle? Today's video is sponsored
can't go
by
down the middle.
Milano,
We'll skip
and
the
this
sponsor.
actually helped me create this video. Milano is a tool that helps you and then Napoleon got involved. Did you expect this video to talk about Napoleon? Because I did not. First off, did you know Napoleon was left-handed? Because I did not.
I did not know that.
I don't know how well known that fact is. But
I did not know that.
Now,
that's
Napoleon
new to me.
Liked to confuse his enemies, and during his conquests, he often instructed his armies to attack from the right, to ride their horses on the right, to do everything on the right in nations where keeping left was the norm. So Napoleon's European conquests forced these countries to make the switch to driving on the right. So places like Switzerland, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands. It's a long list. He was a busy man, apparently. Nations that resisted invasion, Great Britain, kept to the left. Now, over time, as countries were trying to figure out how to handle cars, what situation they want, left or right, they did find that countries with a border crossing where one country was still keeping left and the other country was now keeping right, they found it very difficult and very confusing for drivers passing between those countries. Czechoslovakia.
You got this. You got this. Hey, take a second. Take a deep breath. Atlanta, I got you. You got this. You're gonna get it right. Sometimes we start getting stumbling over our words. I do it all the time, but you got this.
Czechoslovakia.
That's okay.
Czechoslovakia.
That's the best we're gonna get. Just keep it that way.
What I was supposed to say
just keep it that way.
I'm trying to say that word. That country and Hungary were 2 of the remaining keep left countries in mainland Europe. They didn't actually switch over to the right until Germany invaded in World War II. Now, Sweden actually did switch from the left until the right until, do you know what year? 1967. So it was very late. And if you want something really confusing,
very late.
Austria did both. Austria thought,
what you mean?
What? How can we make this more difficult? Let's do both sides. Half of the country drove on the left, and the other half that was invaded by Napoleon drove on the right. Now, we got to talk about Napoleon.
Let's do it.
I did not expect this to be part of the story, but it's pretty important. If you Google, why do people drive on the right? Why do people drive on the left? You will see the same regurgitated story about Napoleon. Dozens of times. Napoleon was left-handed. As part of his military strategy, he forced his people to attack from the right.
That's what I was thinking, because earlier she said most people are right-handed, so in the UK they walk on the left, and that was the reason. But Napoleon was left-handed, and he had his people walk on the right. In my head, I was like, Napoleon probably wasn't worried about confusing people. Napoleon was like, hey, my left is my dominant hand, so we're going to play to my strengths.
All of the countries that he conquered, he forced them to go to the right and ultimately drive on the right. You will see this story over and over again. Whether it is a website article or a YouTube video, you will see it over and over and over again. However, these stories often either don't have a source, they're just saying it, or their source comes from another place regurgitating that story that doesn't have a source. Do you see what I mean? It's just like a giant loop. So none of these sources I have seen, whether a YouTube video, whether a website, none of them have good sources. Most of them don't have a source at all. I have seen that this Napoleon story is a myth, although a popular myth, but a myth nonetheless. I just couldn't find any decent source that talks about this story with authority. Do you know what I mean? It's just everybody quotes it. Humble opinion from researching this. Perhaps there's a grain of truth there somewhere. Perhaps Napoleon did prefer people to start going on the right after he conquered them. Perhaps as transport was getting larger and larger, carriages getting larger and larger, and that sort of keeping left was no longer appropriate, and slowly countries started moving to the right just because the transport was different. Perhaps. And once a country switches to the right, particularly in Europe, there's a lot of moving across borders, things start to get confusing. Perhaps other countries start switching to the right. Just an idea. I would love to see an authoritative source for this Napoleon story. If you can find it, send it to me. I'd love to read it. Anyway, back to Europe. Slowly, certain states in Austria started to switch to the right. They were trying to all come together and drive on the right. It wasn't until Hitler got involved that he forced the remaining states to switch to driving on the right literally overnight. When I started
then I'm driving on the left. If Hitler said he wanted people driving on the right, I'm driving on the left from now on. I'm driving on the left from now on because I don't want to do anything that he think is the right thing to do. I'm on the left. If I wasn't in the U.S., I'd be on the left. So, of course, I got to keep driving on the right. But I want to drive on the left now.
I did not think we were going to be talking about Napoleon and Hitler, and yet here we are. Now, Britain really liked to spread its rule around.
Oh, yeah.
You know what
Yeah,
I'm
they
saying?
did.
So a lot of British colonies
I hear you.
also drove on the left. One thing that came about as part of this little research project was I actually had no idea about my own homeland, Canada. What's the deal with Canada? I had no idea that Canada drove on the left until the 1920s, which isn't even that long ago. Now, I did read in the 1700s, it became more custom to have like large scale wagons. So situations where there would be multiple horses pulling a massive wagon, and in particular in the US this was really popular. And because there wasn't like a driver's seat in these types of wagons, the driver of said caravan thing would typically sit on the left horse at the back, and that meant because again most people are right-handed, he could whip the horses as part of this carriage wagon situation from the rear left horse. And because he was sitting on the left, he would want people to pass him on the left, which means he would keep right. And the rule of keeping right actually swept across the US around this time. We've got a couple of dates. Pennsylvania Turnpike, that was 1792. New York was 1804. New Jersey in 1813. And the rest of the US followed suit quite quickly, and everyone kept right. And once Henry Ford released that beautiful first ever Model T car in 1908, the steering wheel was on the left and it stayed there ever since. Now,
There you
as
go.
Canada and the US became more and more intertwined, I imagine that it just made sense for Canada to forego this previous British idea of keeping
Yeah.
to the left and switch
Yeah.
to the right to match their partners to the south. Now,
There you
who
go.
is still driving on the left? And that is a good question.
Australia and the
Currently,
UK?
4 countries in Europe still drive on the left-hand side. Do you know which ones?
No.
Guess now. Did you pick
No
Great
idea.
Britain, Republic of Ireland, Cyprus, and Malta? And of course, those last two are, guess what? British colonies. Currently,
they
about
are.
75 countries drive on the left, which honestly, a
I
lot
think
more than
Australia drives on the left as well, and they were a colony before as well.
thought. And I wrote this down. It accounts for about 1/6 of the world's land area,
Oh.
a quarter of the world's
Yeah.
roads, and about 1/3 of its population.
Hell,
now,
everybody
1/3
just
of the
go
world's
red.
population drives on the left. Is that a lot?
Yeah, it's a
I
lot.
don't think so. When you say 75
A third
countries,
of the
you're like, oh my
world?
god, really? But 1/3 of the world's population, you're kind of like, okay, I think that makes sense. Maybe that's just me. Now, so far it seems that a lot of people made the change from keeping to the left to ultimately driving on the right. But did anyone go the opposite route, starting out on the right and ending up on the left? And the
That's a good
answer is
question.
yes. The
Who?
Pacific island of Samoa made the switch from keeping to the right to keeping to the left. Guess what year? 2009. The reason given was that they wanted to sort of fall in line with their neighbors, Australia and New Zealand, which,
Okay.
like Britain, drive on the left. Can we
Yes.
circle back to the Brits again real quick, if
Let's
you
do
don't
it.
mind? Now, 2 years after Sweden switched to the right, and if you remember, Sweden was quite late to the game switching, in 1969, the British government actually researched whether it would be feasible for Britain to also make the switch.
And it was like,
Ultimately,
no.
and if you live here and you're still driving on the left, you will know this suggestion, this report was ultimately rejected, mainly due to safety and cost.
Yeah, it's
Safety
too much.
being that
Too much
for
work.
Britain's entire history, people have been keeping left, and it would
Yeah.
be a huge culture change to force everyone to do the opposite, but also, of course, cost. Now, in 1969, when they put together this report, they estimated that the financial burden of making the switch, guess? Did you guess 264 million pounds? And guess how much
did
that
not.
is in today's money? Around 4 billion. So the UK saw that number and they thought, you know what?
The left is good.
So what have I learned through this little mini research project? I didn't realize that we would speak about Napoleon and Hitler. That
I
was
feel
a
that.
surprise. I didn't realize that
Definitely.
a lot of people blame Napoleon for the switch from the left to the right. Whether that is factual or not, kind of confusing. And if we do believe the sources that claim Napoleon is largely to blame, it's Britain's ability to fight him off means that they have stubbornly been able to keep left. And honestly, I don't think it'll ever change. If you would like to join me for another mini deep dive, definitely check out this video on why American eggs are illegal in the UK.
I think I did see that
always,
video.
thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!
Yeah, it just, once you've done it for so long, there's just no point in switching up. So I can understand why the UK wouldn't switch up. Don't make sense. Like, we already drove on the left for so long. Let's just stay on the left. No point in moving over to the right. I think that's how the US was with kind of the like imperial system and the Fahrenheit. We've done it for so long. There's not a super benefit to switching up. So let's just keep it. That's all we got though. Y'all let me know what you guys think. Which side of the road do you guys think people should be driving on, and why? If you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the next one. I'll see y'all next time.